Ever had someone treat you like a servant in a house you helped build? I never thought it would happen to me until the afternoon my daughter-in-law pointed toward a bathroom and barked an order as if I did not belong there. My name is Eleanor Brooks. I was 70 years old, retired, widowed, and proud of the son I had raised. For most of my life, I believed family was built on respect. That belief began to crack the moment I stepped through my son's front door, carrying a homemade apple pie. It was a warm Saturday afternoon in early June. The drive to Jason's house took about 40 minutes from my small home on the edge of town. I had spent the entire morning baking his favorite pie from scratch, the same recipe I had used since he was a little boy. He had called 2 days earlier and asked if I could stop by over the weekend. He sounded distracted during the conversation, but I assumed work was keeping him busy. Jason worked long hours managing a construction company. Brittany often complained about how little time he spent at home. Like many mothers, I tried not to interfere in their marriage. I told myself they would figure things out. As I pulled into the driveway, I noticed several expensive vehicles parked along the curb. That struck me as odd. Jason had not mentioned having company. I grabbed the pie from the passenger seat and walked toward the front door. Before I could knock, it swung open. Brittany stood there holding her phone. She barely looked at me. There was no smile, no greeting, no thank you for coming. Her eyes moved briefly to the pie in my hands before returning to the screen. Then she said something that left me standing frozen on the porch. Good. You are here. Clean the bathroom downstairs and do not touch anything else. At first, I honestly thought she was joking. I waited for a smile. None came. Excuse me, I asked. Brittany finally looked up. The guest will be here any minute. The downstairs bathroom needs attention. Her tones sounded impatient, as though I had failed to complete an assignment. I stared at her. Guests? She sighed dramatically. Eleanor, please. We do not have time for this right now. Then she stepped aside and walked away, just like that. No invitation, no explanation, no appreciation. I stood in the entryway holding a pie that suddenly felt ridiculous. From somewhere upstairs, I heard laughter. Multiple voices. Glasses clinking. Music playing softly in the background. There was clearly some kind of gathering happening inside the house. Yet nobody had mentioned it to me. A strange feeling settled in my stomach. I quietly placed the pie on the kitchen counter and looked around. The house felt different than usual. New decorations. Fresh flowers. Catering trays lined up near the dining room. Whatever was happening here had been planned carefully, and apparently everyone knew about it except me. A few moments later, Brittany appeared again. This time she handed me a roll of paper towels and a bottle of cleaning spray. The bathroom is at the end of the hallway, she said. Please hurry. Then she turned and disappeared upstairs. I stood there holding the cleaning supplies. For a long moment, I did not move. This was the same house I had helped Jason buy 6 years earlier. The same house I had contributed money toward when he could not afford the down payment. The same house where I had painted walls, assembled furniture, and watched over contractors during renovations. Yet somehow, standing there with a bottle of cleaner in my hand, I felt less welcome than a stranger. Then I heard something that made me stop completely. A woman's voice floated down from the second floor. Has Jason's mother arrived yet? Another voice answered almost immediately. Yes. Brittany has her taking care of things downstairs. Laughter followed. Quiet laughter, but loud enough for me to hear. And in that moment, I realized I had not been invited to this house as family at all. For a few seconds, I remained exactly where I was. The bottle of cleaner felt absurdly heavy in my hand. Upstairs, more laughter drifted through the house. Someone turned the music up slightly. Another voice called out for drinks. Whatever event Brittany had organized was already underway. Yet nobody had greeted me. Nobody had asked me to join them. Nobody had even told me what the occasion was. I slowly set the cleaning supplies on the kitchen counter and walked toward the hallway instead. Not because I planned to clean the bathroom, because I needed a moment to think. The downstairs bathroom was spotless. The sink sparkled. Fresh towels hung neatly beside the mirror. A scented candle sat unopened on the counter. There was nothing to clean. I stared at the room for several moments before a realization settled over me. Brittany had never intended for me to actually clean anything. The task itself did not matter. What mattered was putting me in my place, keeping me downstairs, keeping me out of sight, keeping me away from whatever was happening upstairs. I returned to the hallway and listened carefully. More voices. At least a dozen people. Most sounded unfamiliar. Then I recognized one. Brittany's mother, Linda. Her voice carried easily through the open stairwell. "Everything looks beautiful," she said. "Brittany worked so hard organizing this." Organizing what? I wondered. I walked quietly toward the base of the stairs. From there I could see part of the second-floor landing. People moved back and forth carrying plates and drinks. Elegant decorations lined the hallway railing. White flowers, gold ribbons, framed photographs. My stomach tightened. This was not a casual gathering. This was something important. Suddenly Jason appeared at the top of the stairs. Relief flooded through me. Finally, my son would explain everything. "Jason," I called. He looked down and smiled. "Mom, you made it." Made it. Not hello. Not thank you for coming. Not why are you downstairs alone. Just made it. "What is going on?" I asked. His expression changed slightly, almost like he had forgotten something. "Oh." He glanced behind him toward the guests. "Brittany did not tell you." "Tell me what?" Before he could answer, Brittany appeared beside him. Her smile vanished the moment she saw me standing there. "Jason," she said sharply. "Everyone is waiting." Jason looked between us. "I was just explaining." Later, Brittany interrupted. Then she turned her attention toward me. "Eleanor, did you finish what I asked?" Her tone was polite enough that anyone else might have missed the disrespect. Hiding beneath it, I noticed Jason shift uncomfortably. "Good. At least someone did." "The bathroom does not need cleaning," I replied calmly. Brittany crossed her arms. "That is not the point." The words slipped out before she could stop herself. An awkward silence followed. Jason frowned. "What does that mean?" For the first time all afternoon, Brittany looked uncertain. Only for a second. Then she recovered. "Nothing. I just wanted some help." Jason looked unconvinced. Before he could ask another question, someone upstairs called his name. Several guests began gathering around the staircase. More eyes turned toward us. Brittany immediately forced a smile. "We can discuss this later," she said. Then she took Jason's arm and guided him away. I watched them disappear. A few moments later, applause erupted upstairs. Loud applause, followed by cheers. Whatever was happening had officially begun. Curiosity finally overcame hesitation. I moved closer to the staircase until I could see into the main living area above. A large banner hung across one wall. The moment I read the words printed on it, my breath caught. Because the celebration was connected directly to my son. And somehow, despite being his mother, I had never been told about it. I stared at the banner for several seconds before the words fully registered in my mind. "Congratulations, Jason Brooks, Regional Director of the Year." The letters stretched across the far wall in gold and white. Around it were framed photographs showing Jason at work sites, company events, and award ceremonies. A large table held catered food. Another displayed gifts and congratulatory cards. It was a celebration for my son. A major celebration. And somehow, I had never been told it existed. The applause continued as Jason stepped forward into the center of the room. Guests surrounded him. Several people raised glasses. Cameras flashed. Smiles filled every corner of the house. Yet standing at the bottom of the staircase, I felt completely invisible. My mind drifted back to the phone call from earlier that week. Jason had asked if I could stop by on Saturday afternoon. Nothing more. No mention of an award. No mention of guests. No mention of a party honoring the biggest promotion of his career. The omission felt intentional. The question was why. A woman I recognized from Brittany's family leaned over the railing and looked down at me. Her expression immediately shifted with surprise. "Oh," she said, "I did not know you were here." The statement sounded innocent enough, but it landed heavily. Not "I did not see you." Not "hello." Not "welcome." "I did not know you were here." As if my presence had not been expected. As if I had somehow wandered into the wrong event. Before I could respond, she disappeared back into the crowd. I remained where I was. Watching, listening, trying to understand. Then something caught my attention. Near the dining area stood a display board covered with photographs documenting Jason's professional journey. Pictures from college. Pictures from his first construction projects. Pictures from company retreats. Pictures from award banquets. Hundreds of memories carefully arranged for guests to admire. Yet one detail stood out immediately. I was nowhere in them. Not once. Not in his graduation photograph. Not in the image from his first day owning a business truck. Not in the picture celebrating the purchase of this very house. It was as if someone had deliberately edited me out of every important chapter of his life. My throat tightened. I knew memories could be selective. Displays could be incomplete. But this felt different. This felt curated. A version of history where Jason appeared to have reached every milestone entirely on his own. Or perhaps with Brittany's family. Certainly not with the mother who had spent decades helping him get there. I stepped away from the staircase and wandered quietly toward the hallway again. The farther I moved from the party, the easier it became to think. That was when I noticed a partially open door near the home office. Inside sat a large desk covered with folders, envelopes, and paperwork. Normally, I would never have entered someone else's workspace. But something about the day felt increasingly wrong. Every answer seemed hidden just beyond reach. I glanced around. Nobody was nearby. Slowly, I stepped inside. At first glance, everything appeared ordinary. Bills, mail, business documents. Then I noticed a folder sitting near the edge of the desk. My name was printed clearly across the tab. Eleanor Brooks. My heart immediately began beating faster. Why would there be a file with my name on it? I moved closer. The folder looked recently opened. Several pages protruded slightly from the side. For a moment, I considered walking away. Then I remembered Brittany handing me cleaning supplies. I remembered the laughter upstairs. I remembered standing alone downstairs while everyone else celebrated my son. Slowly, I reached toward the folder. Just as my fingers touched the edge of the paper, a voice spoke from behind me. You really should not be looking at that. I turned around instantly. Brittany stood in the doorway, and for the first time all afternoon, she did not look annoyed. She looked nervous. For a brief moment, neither of us spoke. Brittany remained in the doorway, blocking the exit. The noise from the party upstairs seemed distant now. The laughter, the conversations, even the music felt muted beneath the tension filling the room. I slowly lowered my hand from the folder. Why is there a file with my name on it? I asked calmly. Brittany crossed her arms. It is nothing important. The answer came too quickly, too rehearsed. I glanced toward the folder again. Then you will not mind if I look at it. Her expression tightened immediately. That reaction told me more than any explanation could have. Brittany stepped farther into the room. Eleanor, today is about Jason. Can we please not create unnecessary drama? I almost smiled. People often accuse others of creating drama when they are afraid of questions. I am not the one hiding documents, I replied. For the first time all afternoon, Brittany seemed unsure of herself. She looked toward the hallway as though checking whether anyone might overhear us. Then she lowered her voice. You should not concern yourself with things that do not involve you. The statement caught me off guard. Do not involve me? I nodded toward the folder. My name is literally on the file. Brittany opened her mouth, then closed it again. Before she could answer, footsteps approached from the hallway. Jason appeared moments later. There you both are, he said. Everyone is asking where Brittany went. His smile faded when he noticed our expressions. What is going on? Brittany answered immediately. Nothing. Too quickly. Again. Jason frowned. It does not look like nothing. I watched my son carefully. He genuinely seemed confused. Whatever was happening, he was not part of it. At least not yet. Brittany stepped closer to him. We were just talking. Jason looked at me. Mom. I held his gaze for several seconds. Part of me wanted to tell him everything. Another part wanted answers before making accusations. I was asking about this file, I said. Jason glanced at the folder. What file? The question surprised Brittany. I saw it happen. A flicker of alarm crossing her face before she hid it. Jason moved toward the desk and picked up the folder before either of us could stop him. His eyes immediately found the label. Eleanor Brooks. Why do you have a file on my mother? He asked. Brittany's silence stretched longer than was comfortable. It is just paperwork, she finally said. Jason opened the folder. The color drained slightly from Brittany's face. Mine probably did too. Several documents sat neatly organized inside. Financial records, property information, notes attached with paper clips. I watched Jason's eyes move across the first page. Then the second. His forehead creased. What is this? Brittany took a step forward. Jason, maybe we should discuss it later. That was the wrong thing to say. I knew my son well. The moment someone told him not to look at something, his curiosity doubled. He continued reading. The room grew painfully quiet. Finally, he looked up. Why does this mention the down payment on the house? My stomach tightened instantly. 6 years earlier, when Jason and Brittany could not qualify for the mortgage they wanted, I had quietly provided a large portion of the down payment from my retirement savings. I never expected repayment. I never even expected recognition. I did it because he was my son. Jason flipped another page. And why are there notes about transferring ownership? Percentages? Brittany looked trapped now. Cornered. It was only preliminary research, she said. Jason's expression darkened with confusion. Research for what? Nobody answered. He looked back at the documents. Then his eyes landed on a highlighted sentence. Whatever he read made him stop completely. The silence that followed felt heavier than anything that had happened all day. Slowly, Jason raised his head and looked directly at Brittany. Why does this document describe my mother as a temporary financial contributor instead of a permanent stakeholder? The question hung in the air between them. And judging by the fear that suddenly appeared in Brittany's eyes, I realized we had finally stumbled onto the secret she never wanted either of us to find. For several seconds, nobody moved. Jason continued staring at the document, while Brittany searched desperately for an explanation that sounded reasonable. I remained silent. Years of raising a son had taught me that sometimes the most powerful thing a person can do is wait. Eventually, the truth begins speaking for itself. Permanent stakeholder? Jason repeated. What does that even mean? Brittany forced a small laugh that sounded completely unnatural. It is legal language. It does not mean anything. Jason looked back at the page. Then why is it highlighted? Another silence followed. Upstairs, the party continued. Music played. Guests laughed. Glasses clinked. Yet inside the office, the atmosphere felt entirely different. It was as though we had stepped into a separate reality hidden beneath the celebration. Jason flipped through additional pages. His confusion slowly transformed into concern. There are property evaluations in here. He looked up. Why are there property evaluations? Brittany folded her arms tightly. I was exploring options. Options for what? Jason asked. For our future. Her answer sounded prepared. Too prepared. Jason glanced down again. There are notes about refinancing. Another page. There are notes about ownership restructuring. Another page. Then suddenly he stopped. His eyes narrowed. Wait. My stomach tightened. Whatever he had found was important. Brittany took a nervous step forward. Jason, maybe this is not the time. No. His voice became firmer. I think this is exactly the time. He pulled a document from the folder and held it up. Why is there a recommendation here suggesting that Mom's original contribution should be classified as a family gift? I immediately understood the significance. 6 years earlier, when I helped them buy the house, the money had never been discussed publicly. Jason and I handled the details quietly. It was not a loan. It was not an investment. But it was also not something that should simply disappear from history. Brittany looked toward me briefly before answering. Because that is what it was. Jason frowned. Then why does the document mention removing future claims? The room became completely silent. Even Brittany seemed unable to respond immediately. I watched my son's expression carefully. For the first time all day, pieces were beginning to connect in his mind. Future claims? He repeated slowly. Claims to what? Before Brittany could answer, another voice suddenly appeared behind us. Jason. We turned toward the doorway. Linda stood there holding a wine glass. Brittany's mother instantly sensed the tension. Her eyes moved from Jason to the documents and then to her daughter. What is going on? She asked. Nobody answered. Jason held up the paperwork. Maybe you can explain. Linda's expression changed the moment she recognized the documents. It happened so quickly most people would have missed it. But I did not. Her surprise lasted less than a second before disappearing behind a polite smile. Unfortunately for her, that second was enough. Jason noticed it too. You knew about this. It was not a question. Linda opened her mouth, closed it, then tried again. Jason, this conversation is complicated. Apparently, his voice remained calm, which somehow made the situation feel even more serious. Linda set her glass down carefully. Everything Brittany has done was for the good of your family. My heart sank slightly. People rarely begin explanations that way unless they know something looks bad. Jason stared at her. What exactly did she do? Linda glanced at Brittany. Brittany glanced back. Neither answered. The exchange lasted only a moment, but it revealed more than words could have. They were both hiding something. Something larger than property evaluations. Larger than refinancing. Larger than ownership percentages. Then Jason noticed a sealed envelope tucked into the back of the folder. He pulled it free and looked at the label. The color immediately drained from Brittany's face. My name was printed across the front. Eleanor Brooks. Jason slowly turned the envelope over in his hands. Why is there a confidential letter addressed to my mother inside your private file? No one answered. And judging by the fear now visible in both Brittany's and Linda's eyes, whatever was inside that envelope was the one thing they never expected us to find. The office suddenly felt much smaller. Jason stared at the envelope while Brittany and Linda looked as though all the air had been pulled from the room. Neither woman spoke. Neither woman moved. Their silence was answer enough. Slowly, Jason slid a finger beneath the seal and opened it. "Jason," Brittany said quietly, "please do not." That only made him continue. He removed several folded pages and began reading. At first, his expression showed only concentration, then confusion, then disbelief. Finally, something else appeared. Disappointment. Deep disappointment. My stomach tightened as I watched him. "What is it?" I asked. Jason did not answer immediately. He read the pages again before looking up. "Mom, have you ever heard of a life estate agreement?" I shook my head. "No." Jason swallowed hard. "Apparently someone wanted you to sign one." I frowned. "Why?" He handed me the first page. I adjusted my glasses and began reading. The language was formal and full of legal terminology, but the basic meaning became clear quickly. The agreement would have required me to transfer any future claim related to my financial contribution toward the house in exchange for a small one-time payment. In simple terms, it would erase my connection to the property forever. I looked up slowly. "What is this?" Brittany finally stepped forward. It was only a proposal. Her voice sounded defensive now. Nothing was finalized. I continued reading. The date at the top of the document caught my attention immediately. The proposal had been prepared nearly 8 months earlier. 8 months. Why was this addressed to me? I asked. No answer. And why was it hidden in a folder instead of being sent to me? Still no answer. Jason looked from Brittany to Linda. "You never told me about any of this." Brittany crossed her arms. "Because I knew how you would react." "React to what?" Jason asked. "To learning that my mother was being asked to sign away rights she never even knew existed?" Upstairs, the party carried on completely unaware of the conversation unfolding below. Guests laughed. Music played. Somewhere, someone started another round of applause. The contrast felt surreal. One floor above us, people celebrated Jason's success. Down here, the foundation beneath that success was being questioned piece by piece. Linda finally spoke. "You are making this sound worse than it is." Jason turned toward her. "Then explain it." Linda hesitated. "The house has appreciated significantly in value." That much was true. The property was worth far more than it had been 6 years earlier. And, Jason asked, and financial arrangements become complicated over time. Her answer felt carefully crafted. Too carefully crafted. I looked back at the documents. Several attached pages contained calculations. Property values. Estimated equity. Future projections. One figure immediately stood out. The amount of money involved was much larger than I expected. Suddenly, everything began making more sense. The refinancing discussions. The ownership restructuring. The effort to redefine my contribution as merely a gift. None of this was about simplifying paperwork. It was about eliminating obstacles. I set the documents down carefully. "You wanted to remove me from the equation." Brittany's eyes widened slightly. "That is not fair." "Is it not?" I asked calmly. "You invited me here under false pretenses. You treated me like hired help. You had a celebration honoring my son. And now I discover legal documents prepared in my name without my knowledge." For the first time all day, Brittany looked unable to defend herself. Jason rubbed a hand across his face. The weight of everything was clearly settling onto his shoulders. Then something unexpected happened. A voice called from the hallway. "Jason." We all turned. Standing in the doorway was Michael Reynolds, one of Jason's senior business partners. He looked surprised to find us gathered inside the office. "Sorry to interrupt," he said. "I was looking for you." His eyes landed on the paperwork scattered across the desk. "Actually, this may be a good time." Jason frowned. "What do you mean?" Michael hesitated before stepping fully into the room. "Because some of those documents were originally prepared after a conversation I had with Brittany." The color instantly vanished from Brittany's face. And in that moment, I knew Michael was about to reveal something none of us had seen coming. The office fell silent. Even the sounds from the party upstairs seemed distant as everyone turned toward Michael Reynolds. He looked uncomfortable standing in the doorway, as though he had walked into a conversation he never intended to join. Yet the moment he saw the documents spread across the desk, something in his expression changed. Recognition. Michael, Jason said slowly, what are you talking about? Michael glanced at Brittany before answering. Several months ago, Brittany contacted me privately. Brittany immediately stepped forward. Michael, this is not appropriate. He ignored her. She wanted information about the ownership structure of the house. Jason frowned. Why would she ask you? Michael shrugged. Because my wife is a real estate attorney. Brittany wanted to know whether contributions made by family members could be removed from future ownership discussions. The room became very still. Jason stared at him. Removed? Michael nodded. That was the word she used. Brittany folded her arms. You are twisting what I said. No, Michael replied calmly. I remember the conversation clearly because it struck me as unusual. He looked at Jason. She specifically asked about situations where a parent helped purchase a property but was no longer involved in the family's future plans. I felt my stomach tighten. Every new detail seemed to confirm what I had been slowly realizing all afternoon. This had never been about paperwork. It had never been about simplifying finances. It had been about erasing me. Jason looked down at the documents again, then back at his wife. Why? The question hung in the room. Brittany opened her mouth, but no answer came. Why? He repeated. Mom never asked for anything. She never demanded repayment. She never held her contribution over our heads. His voice remained calm, but I could hear the hurt beneath it. So why spend months trying to remove her from the picture? Brittany looked away. For the first time since I arrived, her confidence seemed completely gone. Finally she spoke. Because I was tired. Nobody moved. Tired of what? Jason asked. Brittany let out a long breath. Tired of feeling like this house was never really ours. I blinked in surprise. That was not the answer I expected. Tears appeared in her eyes. Every holiday, every family gathering, every conversation about the house. Somewhere in the back of my mind, I remembered that your mother helped make it possible. Jason stared at her. That was 6 years ago. I know. Her voice cracked slightly, but I could never stop thinking about it. For a moment, genuine vulnerability replaced the defensive woman I had been dealing with all day. I wanted this house to belong completely to us, to our family, to our future. Michael shook his head gently. That does not explain hiding documents. Brittany lowered her eyes. I know. Jason looked exhausted now, more disappointed than angry. So instead of talking to us, you started creating plans behind our backs. Brittany said nothing. The silence answered for her. I looked at my son and suddenly saw how much this day had taken from him. What should have been one of the proudest celebrations of his career had become something entirely different. He had spent years trusting the people closest to him. Now that trust was being tested from every direction. Then Jason noticed another page inside the folder. His eyes narrowed as he read it. Wait. Everyone looked at him. He pulled the document free and stared at it. For several seconds. This is dated 3 weeks ago. Brittany's face immediately paled. Jason slowly raised his eyes. Why were you preparing paperwork to move forward with all of this next month? Nobody spoke. Then Jason read the title printed across the top of the page. And the moment he said the words aloud, I realized the situation was even bigger than any of us had imagined. Proposed property transfer meeting. The words seemed to echo through the office. Proposed property transfer meeting. Jason read the title again as though hoping he had misunderstood it. Then he turned the page and continued scanning the details. The longer he read, the quieter he became. Brittany stood frozen beside the desk. Linda looked down at the floor. Michael remained near the doorway, clearly wishing he were somewhere else. Finally, Jason lowered the document. This was scheduled for next month. Nobody answered. And according to these notes, the goal was to finalize ownership changes. He looked directly at Brittany, without ever discussing them with me. Brittany swallowed hard. I was going to tell you. Jason let out a slow breath. When, again, no answer came. Upstairs, the celebration continued. Guests had no idea that the foundation of the evening was beginning to collapse beneath us. I looked at the photographs on the office wall. Pictures of Jason building a successful career. Pictures of milestones and achievements. All day I had wondered why I had been excluded from those memories. Now I was beginning to understand. Someone had been quietly rewriting the story of this family for years. Michael cleared his throat. There is something else you should probably know. Every head turned toward him. He looked uncomfortable. When Brittany first contacted my wife, She did not just ask about property ownership. Brittany immediately closed her eyes. A reaction so brief most people would have missed it. I did not. Jason noticed too. What else did she ask? Michael hesitated. She wanted to know whether family financial contributions could eventually be challenged if there was no formal repayment agreement. The room became silent once more. Jason stared at him. You mean my mother's contribution? Michael nodded. Yes. Jason looked genuinely stunned. Mom never wanted repayment. I know, Michael replied gently. That is why the question seemed strange. I folded my hands calmly. Oddly enough, I no longer felt hurt. Hurt had been replaced by clarity. For years, I had blamed myself for the growing distance in our family. I wondered whether I had called too often, visited too much, offered too much advice. Now I realized something important. The distance had not appeared naturally. It had been carefully constructed. Jason slowly sat down in the chair behind the desk. The celebration upstairs suddenly felt very far away. How long? He asked quietly. Brittany looked confused. What? How long have you been planning this? His voice was not angry. That made it worse. Disappointment filled every word. Brittany looked toward her mother before answering. It was not a plan. Jason almost laughed. There are folders, legal consultations, property evaluations, scheduled meetings. If that is not a plan, I do not know what is. For the first time, Brittany's confidence completely disappeared. Tears formed in her eyes. I was afraid. Jason frowned. Afraid of what? Her answer came out barely above a whisper. That your mother would always matter more than I did. The admission hung in the room. Nobody spoke. Brittany wiped at her eyes. Every time someone talked about the house, they mentioned her. Every time there was a family story, she was part of it. I felt like I was living in a place that belonged to someone else. I listened quietly. The words explained her feelings. They did not excuse her actions. Jason shook his head slowly. Mom helped us because she loved us. Brittany looked away. I know that now. A long silence followed. Then a voice called from upstairs. Jason, everyone is waiting for your speech. The timing felt almost surreal. His biggest professional celebration was happening just one floor above us. Guests were waiting to honor him. Yet the most important truth of the day was unfolding down here. Jason stood slowly. He looked at me first, then at Brittany, then at the documents spread across the desk. When he finally spoke, his voice was calm and steady. I think everyone upstairs deserves to hear the truth. The color immediately drained from Brittany's face, because she knew exactly what that meant. The walk upstairs felt strangely peaceful, not because the situation had improved. It had not, but because the confusion was finally gone. For years, I had wondered why family gatherings felt different, why invitations became less frequent, why I often felt like a guest in the lives of people I loved most. Now I knew. The truth was painful, but it was also freeing. When Jason entered the main living area, the room immediately erupted in applause. More than 30 guests filled the space. Co-workers, friends, neighbors, members of Brittany's family. Everyone smiled as they waited for the guest of honor to speak. Jason walked slowly toward the center of the room. I remained near the back. Brittany and Linda followed behind us in complete silence. Someone handed Jason a microphone. Speech, several guests called out. More applause followed. Jason looked around the room. Then he smiled faintly. Thank you, everyone. The crowd quieted. This has been an incredible day. He paused. I was planning to talk about work, about promotions, about success. He glanced toward me, but I realized there is something much more important. The room grew still. Success does not happen by itself. Heads nodded throughout the crowd. Jason continued. Every achievement we celebrate today exists because someone helped us get here. His eyes found mine again. Sometimes those people work quietly in the background. They never ask for recognition. They never demand credit. My throat tightened. Across the room, several guests began looking between us. Jason took a slow breath. 6 years ago, when Brittany and I wanted to buy this house, we could not afford it. A ripple of surprise moved through the crowd. There is only one reason we are standing here today. He pointed toward me. My mother believed in us before anyone else did. Complete silence filled the room. She sacrificed part of her retirement savings to help us start our lives. More guests turned toward me. I suddenly wished I could disappear. Jason continued anyway. She never asked for repayment. She never used it to control us. She never even told people about it. Several co-workers exchanged surprised looks. Jason's voice became steadier. Today I discovered that while I was celebrating my career, the person who made much of it possible was being treated as though she did not belong here. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. The room had become completely silent. Then Jason did something I never expected. He stepped away from the microphone and walked directly toward me. "Mom," he said, "I am sorry." My eyes filled with tears. Not because of the apology, because I could see the sincerity behind it. Jason turned back toward the guests. "The most important lesson I learned today has nothing to do with business." He looked around the room. "Never forget the people who helped build the foundation beneath your success." A few moments later, quiet applause began. Then more. Then nearly everyone in the room joined in. Not for me. Not for Jason. For the truth. Brittany stood near the far wall. Her eyes were red. For the first time all day, she seemed to understand the full weight of what had happened. Eventually, she approached me. The room remained silent as she stopped a few feet away. "Eleanor," she said softly, "I was wrong. No excuses. No explanations. Just those 3 words." I nodded. "I know." She lowered her eyes. "I spent so much time worrying about my place in this family that I forgot what family actually means." I studied her for a moment. Then I smiled gently. Not because everything was fixed. Not because trust magically returns in a single day. But because growth begins when honesty finally arrives. Later that evening, guests slowly departed. The house grew quiet. Before I left, Jason walked me to my car. The apple pie I had brought earlier sat carefully packaged in the passenger seat. We both laughed when we noticed it. "You know," Jason said, "I never even got a slice." "Then come by tomorrow," I replied. "I will make coffee." He smiled. "I would like that." As I drove home beneath the fading evening sky, I thought about everything that had happened. I arrived that afternoon, carrying a pie and expecting a simple visit. Instead, I discovered hidden plans, painful truths, and uncomfortable realities. Yet I also discovered something more valuable. Respect cannot be taken from you by someone else's opinion. Dignity does not disappear because another person fails to recognize it. And sometimes the strongest response is not revenge. It is simply standing calmly in the truth until everyone else finally sees it too.